I think I'll go ahead and start off the guide with Oozie Nelson here. Anyway, for those of you that see me do speedruns of Final Fight and 2 as well as Rival Turf, you'll know that I usually use Oozie Nelson, aka Douglas Bild. He's the powerhouse of the 2 characters and my go-to for most of my speedrun attempts. So we're going to be doing a guide for Oozie Nelson / Douglas Bild. Alright, let me go ahead and create some suspend points. Alright, so anyway, we're going to be doing a guide of Oozie Nelson, also known as Douglas Bild. This is for a guide for Rival Turf that I'll be posting up on both YouTube as well as speedruns.com. It was requested by a runner in question. So basically, Oozie Nelson is probably the best character to run the game with, pretty much overall, because of his consistent chain attacks. Like this. And basically, he's pretty much the powerhouse of the 2, along outside Jack Flack. And as you can see, he's pretty much our go-to character for the most part. So basically, we're going to be doing a guide of Oozie Nelson. My apologies if I said that already, but anyway, we're going to be going over his chain attacks, his move list, and what you can basically do here. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and start off a fight with the enemy, perform this chain attack that lets him do 2 punches and a follow up with a body blow plus roundhouse. In angry mode, he gets a slash effect that gets added to this effect, so basically it's pretty much Nelson's bread and butter pretty much for his primary damage, but as you'll see later on, we're going to be we'll be doing some creative things with that pretty much. So basically, your chain attack is pretty much going to be your primary offense, except for that 4th last hit. For jump attacks, one thing you need to know for jump attacks is that until your character hits the ground, you're pretty much invincible. So you can take full advantage of being on airtime and avoid taking damage. But once you hit the ground, you won't be doing a whole... you'll be vulnerable again. But anyway, so basically what we're going to be doing right here is that for a stationary jump attack, Nelson does this rise uppercut move while doing a stationary jump. It does hit any enemies that are close to him. I'll try to set that up. It does some pretty moderate damage. And this is more of a flying elbow. They both pretty much deal the same amount of damage, pretty much. But yeah, when you use jump attacks, you're basically going to be pretty much avoiding most of the hits. So that's good to know. So now that we covered that, we're going to be covering the run attack. So when you do the run attack with Nelson, he basically gets a small high invincibility frame while performing the move until he's done with it. Sometimes that move hits twice, but you really shouldn't be counting on it. It's really really one of the techniques that lets Nelson set up an OTG grab. I'll show you real quick. Normally you don't grab enemies that are on the ground in most beat-em-ups, but Rival Turf is kind of the exception. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but your real goal is basically setting up for throws. Speaking of throws, we're going to be performing one of them right now. Let me go ahead and reset that and start again. So basically, one thing you need to keep in mind about Nelson's Power Bomb, it's pretty much his strongest high damaging move, but at the same time, what it does is basically gives the enemy some iframes. So I'm trying to set one up so that the enemy could be, show you what I mean by that. So we're going to set that up. So I'm going to try attacking the opponent. So for pretty much around 2 to 4 seconds, the enemy is going to probably be invincible to anything we throw at it. So you do not want to be using the Power Bomb during speedruns. Now with the Hurricanrana / Frankensteiner though, that's our primary throw that we're going to be using from here on out. So we get our Angry Mode throw. So when you use Angry Mode, Nelson's Power Bomb comes up with this ridiculous damage, and you can basically do a lot more than your standard power bomb. So, as you can see right there, that power bomb nearly took out Skinny, but unfortunately, it didn't wipe him out completely. But in speedrunning purposes, you do not want to be using the power bomb. You want to be using the Frankenstein. One thing Nelson does have an advantage over Flack is that he doesn't need to grab his opponents from behind. He could just simply grab him up front, hit back, and then press the attack button, you get your Frankensteiner. Easy as pie. One thing to know about the Frankensteiner is it always puts the enemy on one plane above where they should be. We were on bottom plane just now, and that enemy is now on the upper plane instead. So basically, that's pretty much Nelson's full strat. So if I can get Angry Mode again, I can probably show you some of the other stuff you can do. So when you do running attacks with Angry Mode, you can basically do this. And that adds a slash effect to his final hit. But that's pretty much all Angry Mode does. Believe it or not, we're going to be showing one little trick that makes the speedrun possible with this character. What I call it is the low blow chain, or stun lock chain, pretty much. I'll call it for a safer thing. Basically what you do is you use the low blow and you do your first 3 hits of your chain, and then you basically keep rinsing and repeat until the enemy's defeated. Of course, enemies do have the ability to break out of your chain attacks, so you want to mash pretty fast. But technically it's our primary damage dealer. And that's going to be our primary form of damage with Nelson. So basically all you have to do is just do this. Now if you're playing the Japanese version, this will cause the enemy to jump up and down a bit, but it doesn't deal a whole lot of damage. Well, I shouldn't say that. It does deal quite a bit of damage, but it's not really a high damaging move. But your main purpose with it is mostly just to immobilize the enemy and set them up for chain finishes. Now, when you do a final hit of a chain attack, though, the damage won't appear until then. So basically that's pretty much Nelson for the most part. He can pretty much finish enemies pretty quickly, unlike Flack. I'll give you a little quick detail with a little bit of Nelson's gameplay, just to give generally a rough idea of how he operates, how I use him. So basically we want to use the Frankensteiner / Hurricanrana. We do want to use the low blow as much as possible. And try to do that from here on out. But there is some points where you do need to execute your throws, because they're not only your offensive tools, but they're also your defensive ones as well. So anyway, we're going into the bus. For the most part, Nelson's not that difficult to control. But there is a problem with chain attacks landing hits, or at least starting them off. If there is one downside about using Nelson, or at least 2 of them, it's the fact that his running attack doesn't really have a lot of setup time, so you basically have to watch out when you perform run attacks, because you do run a chance of being hit. His chain attack doesn't have very good reach. It does have decent reach, but not very good. I can't really say if it's better than Flack's, but it's just the way it is. So anyway, we got our angry attack set up. So we'll finish off that push. So unfortunately I triggered the power bomb, so that butch is going to be invincible for quite a bit. This is not normally how I would do most of my runs with the character, but it's just the way it is. But anyway, once we get done with this first stage, we'll go ahead and end the tutorial for Nelson, and we're going to be switching on over to Flack, so we can cover other stuff. One thing you do want to keep in mind is that any enemies that get hit by the Frankensteiner, they can be OTG grabbed. Oh, you can break out of throw grabs like that. Nice. Yeah, not very cooperative. But anyway, another attack that triggers OTG throws is the Power Bomb. Now, you have to be holding one of the run buttons to trigger it. But every now and then, you could probably cancel a Power Bomb and go straight into another throw. But the run attack is going to be your primary OTG grab point, so you want to be using that most of the time. So we're coming up to the first boss. He's pretty easy. Genie's pretty easy. All you have to do is just make sure he doesn't pick up his sword. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about the special attack. By spending 5 points, you get to basically perform a very powerful attack that covers both your side and in front of you. So you could use that as a defensive move. Believe it or not, score is actually used to trigger warp zones in this game. There's 2 warp zones in this game. Believe it or not, there was actually intended to be 4 before 2 of them got removed. So unfortunately, that wound up being only 2 warp zones, but I'll cover those another time. But technically, that's pretty much it for Oozie Nelson, but let me see if I can get some more OTG throw examples out of the way. If we can get the enemies to cooperate. That's not one of them. And unfortunately, the martial artist enemies are... See right there? I was able to grab that enemy. And I was able to do that too. You can sometimes grab enemies from power bombs, but not all the time. But yeah, this game is very throw heavy when you first play the game in general, but overall, when you get better at the controls and everything, it gets a lot more easier. So anyway, that's going to be it for Oozie Nelson. I'm going to go ahead and switch on over to Jack Flack, aka Rick Norton, the main protagonist of the Rival Turf series. Gonna take a small break before we get started.